This is the Parents in Sport podcast. Amazing guests, honest conversations, topics that matter.
Welcome to season 2 of the Parents in Sport podcast. I am your host, Gordon McClelland, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Olympian, author, former diplomat, leadership coach, Cath Bishop. Cath, thank you for joining us on the show.
Great to be here.
Now, I'm really excited about today's episode, talking about your new book, The Long Win, and what that actually means for us all as people, and specifically for us as sports parents. I do have to say, I read the book a couple of weeks ago. It was so enlightening. I will say that it is one of the best books that I have ever read. On a number of levels, but certainly on a personal level, it carried a lot of meaning to me. So I'm extremely excited about having you here. Now, I obviously know little bits about you, Cath, but many of our listeners maybe won't know as much. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, absolutely. And in a way, the book kind of has been a process of tying together the different strands of my life, and how this theme of, what winning means has kind of gone through all of them. So I learnt to row at university, so came quite late to sport, having not been a sort of particularly sporty child, and felt a bit excluded, if you like, by not being top talent. But fell in love with the sport at university without any aspirations, which was also great. But over time, then it emerged that I did have potential, and ended up going on to compete in 3 Olympic Games. Over the period of that 10 years, had some quite different experiences, huge amounts of disappointment early in my career in terms of results, but then a kind of real shift in my thinking that helped me to get better results, but also have a different experience towards the end of that career. I then worked in the Foreign Office as a diplomat for 12 years. So what seems like a really different career from rowing, but actually it's a very people-based career. It involved working in teams, it involved working under pressure. So actually there were lots of experiences where I could draw on things that had helped me in the rowing. And now I sort of bring both of those to my work in leadership development. I'm working as an executive coach and also working in business schools, helping organizations understand how teams work, how leaders work, and bringing, also a lot of different roles still supporting sport, and bringing a different framework to how we think about success and how we think about winning, which has become so narrow, but something that I really want us to challenge and broaden out.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's a couple of things that you came up with in there that often, I guess, bring up sort of topics of debate on this podcast. And that first one was actually how late to the sport that you were. So, we talked to lots of sports parents who are committing huge amount of hours early in the sporting experience, often thinking that that's the only route to success, I guess. And actually, we know in the world of sport that actually things can happen much later on. What are your views on that, or what you see in terms of, maybe sports parents' emphasis on their young people at younger ages?
Yeah, I feel really grateful to be released from not being pushed into sport too young, because I think I wouldn't have had the maturity that came from kind of coming into sport later. I think, I wouldn't have been able to be a junior rower rowing at international level. I don't think I'd have been ready for that. And yet in my 20s, I was absolutely ready to be very committed and to explore my potential. So I feel very grateful to have been able to, just find a sport I could fall in love with without worrying about talent. I mean, there was absolutely not a thought in my mind when I took up rowing, somewhat unenthusiastically, quite reluctantly in a way at university, thinking, I don't think this is for me. I don't want to get up early. I'm not being very sporty at school. Why am I going to enjoy this? And then to actually just fall in love with the sport without the pressure of how good might you be, and then to be able to explore over time, that question once a talent path emerged, if you like. But I feel, released from that as I'm a parent as well. And because I didn't find sport till much later on, I'm really, really keen for my children just to try a variety of sports. I think a lot of the philosophy, if you look at books like David Epstein's Range, is all about how we tend to over-specialise. And he looks in sport and other aspects, education, business. then I think you can see that it's often important that we allow people to flourish when the time is right for them. I'm also a big fan of the book Late Bloomers by Richard Karlgaard, which again, we have these assumptions in society. If you haven't reached something by this age, and it seems to get earlier and earlier in life, then it's too late, then you're over the hill, then you can't achieve this. And that hits you when at so many stages of your life, if you haven't done this by secondary school, or if you haven't done this by university, and then if you haven't done this by the time you're 30, and if you haven't done this by the time you're 40, we do all that throughout life, and yet none of us has a linear pathway where our development kind of happens in a continuous way, and nor do we stop developing by the time we're 16 or 20 or 25. And so so much of our expectations can actually hold us back.
Yeah, and I think it's that whole patience piece, isn't it? We live in a society where, particularly young people are sort of craving instant gratification, and we've almost become worse as adults with it over the last 20, 30 years as well. It's almost become, it must happen immediately. And, I think of some of the dialogues that, I've had with parents where they've maybe introduced their children to, I don't know, swimming or a musical instrument or a different type of sport. And they take them one or two times and they struggle to play a note properly, for example, with the clarinet, or they struggle to kick a ball. And then they say, oh, well, they're not sporty, they're not musical. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, we haven't really given them much of a chance. And it's almost like we're desperate to be able to give our children a label, an identity for something. Do you think that's a sort of fair statement?
Yeah. I do, and I think this talent question is a frightening label, that we sort of not talented at this, and we really have no idea. In fact, most of the research into talent ID shows we get it wrong when we do it early, and yet we still try and do it as parents and as coaches. And it's something a lot of the football academies are kind of starting to look at, because they are missing out. They're cutting off people at too young an age when, they still have so much mental and physical development to do. So, I think this question of whether you have talent or not is very dangerous from a mental health perspective. And it means that we start to lose sight of the fact that it's often our practicing, that sense of, a longer term commitment to just developing and seeing development as the aim rather than an outcome, being the best at something, being the best in the school or the club. Actually, let's just focus on our development, see what's possible this year, next year, and who knows the rate of our development. So I think there's a lot of that narrative that is unhelpful, that, again, you mentioned that short-termism, that's a huge problem, I think, because we forget the bigger picture. It means that so many times I hear of schools where they've won a trophy, but everyone was so sick of the experience on the way to it, they never touched that sport again. And that, to me, is not success. If we are not supporting children to have sport in their lives as a lifelong endeavour, as something that brings them good health, lots of fun, good friendships, then I don't care what short-term trophy or medal we may have won, it is not worth the cost.
Yeah, and then parents have that added complication then that you and I agree that's the approach we need to be taking. But then by the nature of how those sports are set up and how they communicate, that's what many things are naturally valued. So it is still all about winning and outcomes, and actually aligning those messages is a real challenge, because if we say it is all about development, then we can't have social media feeds, for example, that only mention results and outcomes, because we're sending very different messages about, what's actually important. And, having lived through the experience of having a child in a football academy, which he still is, which is a miracle, and going through that system. And I still remember that chase for the, 9-year-old football contract. And I live and breathe this every day and know what the right things are do, but you actually get sucked into a vacuum of everything else that's going on. So I've had to be aware that it's probably not an ideal scenario, and then try and manage the bits on the side of that, which is why working with parents in sport was set up to add that level of support that if we are in some of those programs, because of the way they've been presented to us by society or sport or education, well, we've got to try and do some stuff on the side of this to make sure that it's a far more, balanced perspective. Obviously, the easier thing to do is not to worry about any of these things till much later. And I've got a guy, you like this, I've got a guy called Steve Salis coming on, who's been involved in football for many years, written a book on educating football, been a head teacher, has very similar views on where we are with it. And he does feel a little bit sorry at the moment for the rap that football academies sometimes get, because there's lots of good practice going on out there. Whether or not we agree with the principle of people going through it at a young age is another matter, but there's lots of people trying to do some really good stuff. But as he said to me at the weekend, the difficult thing that we associate with it is all the negatives, whereby there can be lots of positives if we're viewing it in that much broader experience. But my view is football academies, wherever you read it in the press, get a really bad rap. But you see, I've seen more children, for example, being hot-housed academically. I've seen more children involved in sports like hockey, which no one would even imagine, doing way more than my son's doing at 11 and 12 through the variety of their school program, their club program, or whatever else. So I actually think that it's not just about football academies. It's actually looking at the whole picture of what childhood and success actually looks like, which is what I think you do a brilliant job in the book of. So can you tell us a little bit more about the book and how we need to see winning as a much wider framework, and how we can all really sit comfortably with that approach that I know we're going to talk about?
Yes, and I think it's important not to feel it's either or, that we have to completely reject the current situation. I think we can work with it. I think we can bring a different perspective with which we situate it. So for me, it's still okay to be wanting to win, to be wanting to perform, but it needs to be within a broader framework. So it's not all hanging on winning or losing. It's not all or nothing. It's like we're pursuing that whilst we're also developing ourselves in the way that we turn up, in the way we lead, in the way we deal with disappointment, in the way we sort of develop who we are beyond just the sport or the musical instrument that we do, in the way we're kind of aware of that social responsibility. We become a role model once we're involved in top teams, or once we've got that sort of particular place at a talent school or something. Then it's about thinking more broadly. So we as parents or as coaches can bring a broader perspective, so we don't just ask about results. We actually are balancing out what we see elsewhere. You're right, we might only see the results on social media. Now, where we can, we should challenge that and again try and get that broader picture. But we don't have to only see the results, because we know our children are more than a result on a board. We know they're going to have lives with highs and lows. We know that some will end up injured for at least a period of their career. So we just know this isn't a straight line, and it's important that we take a step back to clarify the broader picture. So the 3 C's of the long win are about helping us stay on track, to keep pulling out of this narrow short-term thinking and to keep putting a broader frame around it all of the time. So first of all, we're clarifying broader success criteria that aren't just about the outcomes, that are about the bigger picture of why we do sport. It connects us to others. It allows us to explore our potential mentally and physically. It enables us to develop life skills of resilience, of leadership, of teamwork. It enables us to be part of something that has meaning for the teams, the communities that we represent. So we need to kind of keep thinking, what have we done today that's also taken us towards that purpose, as well as what have we done today in the particular match that we did. So we can keep adding in the long perspective. Why does this match matter? Because it's a journey we want to be on to see what we're capable of and to support others around us and to be part of a team. So we can keep adding, if you like, those broader success criteria. So we broaden out the purpose of why we're doing something, and we broaden out the time perspective. We start to also clarify how we do things, not just what. So rather than, okay, this is the score, actually, how did I present myself, as a member of the team today? How good a team member was I in the match that we won or lost? Because actually the result tells us none of that. And I really sort of remember this separation coming in through sports psychology that helped me enormously to actually perform much better by separating out this concept of performance and results. So the results, of course, we want to optimize them. We want them to be good, but we also know that they're out of our control. They depend on other people. They depend on our opposition and how well they turn up, how fast they go, how good they are on that day. It depends on maybe injuries, whether you're fit and injured or the rest of your team are healthy on that day. It depends on luck. It depends on referees, on crossbars being hit or not. There are so many factors we can't control. Thinking about those is kind of, gets us much more stress, if you like, and a sense of pressure that's hard to deal with. But if we focus on our performance, can I bring my best today? Can I deliver, the best rowing strokes in my case, but also in a way that I'm the best team member? So I'm thinking about and connecting and communicating with those around me. So I've got how goals as well as what goals. I've got that sense of, how I turned up, not just a result, because that doesn't tell me those things. And I remember when we debriefed races towards the end of my career, our coaches would always ask us about the performance. So I might have won a race and the coach would say, great result, tell me about the performance. And then we'd start to go, well, the warm-up was, these things worked, these things didn't work as well. And in the race, this was good, but do you know what, we need to improve this. And maybe we should start trying, to do this a bit differently. My mental sort of focus was good here, but it wavered a bit here. Our communication as a crew was good here, but we could improve it here. And do you know what? We had exactly the same conversation when we lost, because he would say, okay, result is what it is. Now tell me about the performance. And we go, well, actually, this bit went really well that we've been working on, but this bit didn't seem to click. So we need to look at that again. And this is what we might try to do differently. And so we started to develop this conversation that puts us on that second C of constant learning, if you like, where we're always thinking about win or lose. Do you know what? We need to go faster next time. We need to explore. We've always got more potential within us that we want to start pushing and finding and developing together. So the constant learning gives us a resilience. The results sometimes will be good, sometimes they'll be rubbish. But that doesn't mean that we're good 1 minute or we're rubbish the next. And if you get on that roller coaster, it's really stressful. It's not a lot of fun. It's exhausting. We don't perform well either. So we want to have that constant learning approach where win or lose, you learn. You do some things well and you do some things you're going to improve. And that's the beauty of sport. You don't ever go, I've won, I can do it all, I can sit back. Because you know that won't help you next time you have a match or you have a race. So this constant learning gives us then that resilience that we're always focusing on development. And the good thing is, that is the best way to get the best results as well. So separating out that performance and results in that constant learning process. And the final thing, we've got clarity, constant learning, we've got connections. So we're actually really investing in and prioritizing the relationships. We cannot succeed alone, whether we're in an individual sport or team sport, we're always part of a team. And we need to make sure that, again, those relationships come first, not last, not an afterthought. It's not just about my rowing technique. It's about the people I'm in a crew with, how I can support them and challenge them, how we communicate, how we bring the best out of each other, how we manage our disagreements, how we manage the challenging times when we don't win, how we get through those experiences is what enables us then to be performing on the days when it matters, but also to have relationships that last way beyond the day on which you race.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's such a fantastic way to view the sporting experience, as well as somebody who set off on their sports journey personally thinking that it was all about winning and competition because that's what we'd been trained to do growing up. it's certainly far less stressful when you start to look at it through the broader success criteria and the far bigger picture. I think it's really interesting, and I just want to, I know we've spoken a bit offline, Cath, but I just want to show you a little bit around our work, which links beautifully to this, because the first thing we'll always do in a workshop is I have a bit of a disclaimer, and that is that I have to say to people that I'm not one of those happy, clappy, laissez-faire parents who don't value winning or competition, like you say. But I feel the need that I have to say it so that people in the room say, oh, good, well, at least he gets it. Well, you know, because I do value winning and I do value competition. But like you say, it's part of a much, you know, wider picture. And it's how we actually frame that I think's caused some of the challenges. The next bit in our workshops is when we say to parents, you know, if I could give you 3 wishes, what do you really want for your child from the sporting experience? I never get professional athlete, world record holder, Olympian, or any of these traits. I get parents who say to me, well, I want resilient kids who feel good about themselves, kids who can communicate well, good teammates, all the things that you sort of mentioned in there. So actually, I think when parents are asked away from the pressure of competition, that is probably what we all want for our kids as parents, is those healthy traits that we've talked about. Now, the big challenge in sport comes is, how often do our behaviours as parents align to what we've just said we've done? So obviously you can imagine during these workshops, because you then say, and what's the most popular question asked by a parent to a kid when they haven't been at an event? And of course, everybody puts the hand up, did you win? Followed by, if we're playing the other team games, the second most popular question asked by a parent is, did you score? Followed by the third most popular question, which tends to be, well, how did you do compared to somebody else? And it's almost like, well, on one hand, we've said that we really value all those things and we want those, but actually our questioning and behaviours, whether that be in the car journey home afterwards, actually tell our children that we value something else. So we've had this fascinating mix across grassroots sports into pathway programs. Okay, these are the challenges. What do we do as parents that we think enhance these character and life skills? What do we maybe do as parents where we can be really honest and say, actually, do you know what? My kid's not particularly good at that. And I don't think I help that by doing X, Y, and Z. So you end up with this lovely chat about, oh, I think our kid does that well. And maybe that's because we do that at home. Or maybe that's because it's our approach to it. You know, every parent will say to me, I want a resilient kid. But then the moment they get in the car, we'll make an excuse for why something's gone wrong. It's only because we want to make our children feel better, but it doesn't actually help develop those skills around it, for example, as part of building resilience and the conversations that we need to have. But what I do know is when you look at those skills that we're talking about there, and I guess it's going back to the old adage of process over outcome, isn't it? That if we view that and we saw our kids on a regular basis displaying some of those character and life skills that you've mentioned, not only is there a good chance that the performance will follow suit in terms of what they're trying to actually do, but it also gives us the opportunity to pick up amazing conversations that are going to help these kids grow into successful adults, whatever walk of life they choose to go into. And I think that's why it's so invaluable what you've put down on paper. And I hope some of the work that we're doing with parents, just trying to make sense of this, because it is really, really challenging.
Yeah. And do you know, I think the really interesting thing you highlight there is language. The language we use is really important. And we need quite a level of self-awareness about the language we use and the language we hear and the language we heard growing up, the language we hear in films about the sort of macho, who's the winner, who's the loser, the stuff we heard in the playground growing up, the stuff we still probably hear in a lot about organisational life. And that is a reason, if you like, in the book that I sort of in the first third spend some time saying why this is quite a deep-seated phenomenon in our culture, because we read about the winners on the battlefields in the history books. That's what we learn about in history. The strong people are the people who defeated others and then wrote the history books, if you like. And only slowly are we starting to realize at the moment kind of in society that there's quite a lot of people left out of our history books, and it's more than just a series of victories on battlefields. And that certainly doesn't relate to the 21st century, when we don't fight conventional wars like that at all, and we have other much more complex issues like environmental protection and inequality, etc. And so, you know, we need to think about where that's come from, the media, the books we've read, and some of the beliefs we have, almost, that we are born to win, that it's innate, that somehow that's how we're made, which again, lots of people will say to me, oh, we can't change it. But actually, that's not true either. The way that we have evolved has been down to our ability to cooperate in large numbers and communicate in a sophisticated way. That is what has separated out the human species, if you like. Not the fact that we were aggressive or able to make weapons early and fight off other animals or whatever we might somehow think in the back of our mind. So we have to challenge quite a lot of what we potentially picked up along the way and reframe that, and therefore see winning through a different lens. So you're right, I'm absolutely not against winning, and people will very quickly kind of jump to these two things. So the way that you say at the beginning of your sessions, you have to say, I'm not against winning. There's almost this sense that either you're for it or you're against it. And I'm saying, I'm for winning in a different way. How we win matters. You know, I find it, and over sort of recent years in the research for the book, I was just astonished at how many gold medalists I found who had won, who had reached the pinnacle, but were depressed, unfulfilled, empty, had nothing of lasting value from that. I thought, well, that's not a great picture of success, is it? How have they become so disconnected that winning doesn't have anything of lasting benefit for them, doesn't have lasting meaning for them? And that's what's important to me. If you've been through an experience on the way to winning where it's about a single moment crossing the line, it then doesn't connect to the rest of your life, to the people around you, to the values that you've developed along the way, then that's not a great picture of success. And you've paid a heavy price for that. But if you can win that gold medal and be part of something that has meaning beyond the podium, that you are connected to the communities, you've had incredible experiences in managing pressure, becoming resilient, helping others, then actually you've got something that's worthwhile. And what we then find is that it's not the medal that determines that. It's the way that you approach that experience, and whether you actually win or not, it's what you have of lasting benefit beyond that moment crossing the line that is the bigger win.
Yeah, there's an awful lot to unravel, isn't there? We could probably do a little bit of help from the media, Cath, as well, couldn't we? At some point, in some of the the headline pieces we get, the general public get, because we're talking here as people who understand to some degree sport and education, and yet there's lots of people who have no background in either and are amazing in their walks of life, maybe as builders or plasterers, and have nothing to draw any experience on other than maybe their own sporting experience or what it was like for them with their own parents. And they end up picking up the sound bites, I guess, of the sort of populist theories or the headline and the way it's portrayed on TV, and it is so challenging for people to understand that there is this other side to it.
Yeah, I agree, and I really share that frustration, and at times I just want to shape the media and create a way of helping them see the bigger picture, because I think we lose out on so many brilliant stories that we would connect to. We actually put people off sport by presenting it in such a narrow, heroic, macho, short-term way that people feel, well, unless I think like that, then it's not for me. And then we sort of deepen that kind of binary thinking for those who are watching, and we put off a whole load of other people from what is at the core a means of connecting and of living healthy lives and exploring human potential and all of the good stuff that sport could and should represent. Now, I think the old-fashioned media, I mean, we see it across everything, that there's this narrow view, isn't there? I hope that social media actually gives us an opportunity for different voices. For example, the conversation we're having now. There are an increasing number of podcasts that are highlighting different stories, that are helping us to see a broader picture. So I think we have more access to the bigger pictures, the longer stories that are before and after crossing the line. I think we have more access than ever before to those. They are out there if we want to listen to them. And that encourages me. And I think over time, our desire to learn through human stories, it's what we connect to, it's what makes us feel we belong to something that matters, is going to shift the thinking. But it is frustrating how much the old-fashioned media stick to their very easy, lazy winner-loser narratives.
Yeah, and I think sport is going to have to become more agile and adapt over the next decade. You know, we look at, you know, declining participation rates, you know, which won't have been helped by the last year as well. We look at the reasons that children play sport, that we now know by research, and there's that disconnect between why they're playing and other people's motives in the experience. And very interesting, I'm doing some work next month where we're actually looking at that. You know, we're trying to sell our program in effect to the consumer now. And actually the consumer's becoming more and more challenging. And I think if it is just based around, let's say, a performance element, then we're not really selling a lot, particularly when we're trying to attract people into sport at the age of 7. And I think we're going to have to become far better at joining these dots up to present this far more holistic program to go alongside the physical development of young people. Because probably the question I get asked the most by sports parents would be, how do I know it's all been worth it, Gordon? As they're thinking about all the time, all the money, everything that they've invested into it, all the emotion, all the energy. And I was stumped with it. And I think I got to about take 160. I'm probably on about that now with this. And my latest one is that if we've used sport as a really safe vehicle to equip our children with a wide range of life and character skills that they can use in whatever walk of life they choose to go into and thrive, then it will have been worth every single ounce of energy, time, and passion and everything that we've thrown into it. And there's something quite peaceful in that statement, isn't there? As a parent, when we know how stressful it is trying to keep up with the Joneses, that actually if you sit back and look at your kid's character and the skills, and you view it all through that, and you know that it's going to develop them, because as you say, we don't have a crystal ball. That's why Talent ID is so shot to bits. As long as they go off and be happy individuals who thrive in whatever thrive may be, then actually we're going to be pretty happy as mum or dad, aren't we?
I like that. I really love that answer. And I always think about stories. What's the stories that your children tell about being involved in whatever they're involved in, sport, music, whatever it might be, drama? What are the stories that they tell now? What are the stories that they're going to leave telling? And it's never about the results, it's about the minibus journeys. It's about the times as a team. Often when the chips were down, when you pull together, those are the things that you remember. Those are the things that you take with you. So I always say, what are the stories that you take with you when the medal has long been put in a drawer, if it even exists, or the trophy has been put somewhere? But the stuff you carry around is the experience. So again, I think that would tie in nicely to that question almost. What's the experience they'll take from this? The hard times where they've had to kind of dig and find out about themselves and pull together and have some difficult conversations. What's the stories that they'll take with them? Because those are with them all the time. They'll take them into their professional lives, their personal lives. They'll be telling stories to the next generation. Much more than they'll be getting medals out of drawers, because we all love the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm just sort of conscious of the time and not wanting to overrun here. Just going back to your book, obviously you had a message you wanted to get across. When you did all the research to try and bring it all together, was there anything that either shocked or surprised you anymore? Was there anything that you sort of knew, but then it was like, oh wow, that really is incredible. Was there anything that either backed it up or was a big surprise?
So it was this increasing discovery of people who won not feeling very happy at all, and just the list growing and growing and growing. I mean, you can go back to people like Mark Spitz, who won the 7 medals in Munich in swimming for the US, who basically his life fell apart once he realized that these medals weren't a way of fixing life to be perfectly happy and fulfilled forever. You then got to get on with the business of life. And he never did. He never managed to do that. And we've seen Michael Phelps actually talking a lot in recent times about the challenges that he had. The Weight of Gold was the name of his documentary. And, you can Tyson Fury talks about the void after winning against Klitschko. Victoria Pendleton talks about, the anticlimax when she won in Beijing. She didn't feel like celebrating at all because, again, of the challenging experience that she'd had along the way. The number of those winners who presented a picture of success that you wouldn't want your child to go through, an experience that doesn't show the full picture, that made me think, gosh, we really need to redefine what success looks like by the ongoing experience of what happens before any medal that's won or not won and afterwards. We need a much kind of a longer and qualitative view, not just a quantity of how, your score, how many medals, whatever it might be. The quality is what's so important. And I think, I only found more stories, if you like, of people almost feeling, in a way ashamed to admit it. And the sense that, I was sold the lie that if I won, everything would be okay. And of course it's not. But we all know that deep down, and yet we sort of buy into it and we potentially sell on that lie to the next generation. And we need to think about sport through a much broader lens, because we are not actually optimizing what it can bring to our lives. And there is such a bigger potential for it to help the fabric of our communities to lead healthier lives that I think we have a different perspective on over the last year. And we need to take that perspective with us as we re-engage in sport over the next period.
Yeah, and look, as I said at the beginning to you off air, that it's probably the best book I've ever read, and I'm always honest with my listeners as a sports parent or coach or educator. But that was big on a personal level for me. That you played all your sport. You thought if you got to the next stage, then that was just brilliant. You'd be happy. You thought then if you coached teams, if you won the next trophy, then that would do it. And then actually, I think of all the times where I've made changes in my life or left a coaching job after being successful or whatever else. I actually drove away, and it was just there was nothing there. So it's like, oh, well, now it's time to go. And it was like the thing. And the thing about the book that brought it home for me was actually that's subconsciously always been there, but it actually highlighted how it feels. And I really hope lots of people will read the book and actually will feel a whole heap better about everything and will be able to bring some of those things that they've maybe known out into the open and maybe start moving forward in a more positive way. I mean, the one I am embarrassed about and ashamed about, Cath, and I read it and it really touched a nerve with me, is I've always been of that opinion that you try to be the best, and if that means you batter everybody on the way, then actually there's no, whereas fundamentally I'm quite a nice person and quite supportive of lots of people by the work I do. But that was how the element of competition, I think, was always sold to me. And yeah, actually, I look at working with parents in sport now, and it's all about collaboration. It's all about talking with lots of different people. It's all about working with the people who work with the athletes. So, well, how can we present this to parents in a way that they can work with? And it just brought up all of these sort of emotions and thought processes to say, wow. And it's like, go on, Cath, you've done it. You've managed to provide some real clarity here. So I owe you a very personal thank you for that.
Oh, great. Well, it took me many years to challenge some of those narratives that I felt I'd had to learn when I became an Olympian. Now you get serious. Now you've got to be really miserable if you lose, because that's what winners do. Otherwise, there's a danger that, maybe, if you take it okay if you lose, then that's a sign you're probably not cut out to be a winner. All of this, it's rubbish. And yet we feel somehow, we're going to get judged if we don't behave in particular ways. I mean, that behavior is not logical. We do need to challenge that and think about the original meaning of to compete comes from the Latin competere, which is striving together, not against others, actually together. And I think some of the great moments of sport, even the wonderful boat races we had this year, which was so close, each crew was pushing each other on. It wasn't one won, one lost. Actually, they needed each other. You needed both crews performing at a really high level to push themselves to a better performance. Okay, there is a winning losing element of that, but it's not the whole story at all. Both crews found out so much about themselves, worked as a team, learned a lot that they can take into whatever comes next. Federer, Nadal, those finals, those 5-set finals at Wimbledon, the Australian Open, it's the same. They were exploring the boundaries of their sport. That's the bigger win that we see, not just, an individual kind of trophy won or lost. That's the short-term bit. But what they're doing is exploring the capacity of what is possible, which is so much more exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly don't have to sell that message to me. Now, just on a wrap up, Cath, where can people find the book? Where can they find out more about the work that you're currently doing?
Sure. So the book, The Long Win, is available wherever you might buy books. So online, Amazon, bookshops, you can order it anywhere you normally would. There's an audio version, a Kindle version, so however you want to read it. And I have a website, cathbishop.com, where you can hear more about my speaking, facilitating, coaching work. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram, very easy to find, Cath Bishop, same.
Fantastic. Cath, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Parents in Sport podcast. I really hope that we'll get the opportunity to do it again. So thank you very much for joining us.
Really great. Thanks for inviting me and really appreciate your support for the book. I'm delighted to hear it chime so well with the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Check us out at parentsinsport.co.uk.